Race seems to be the #1 issue on the campaign trail, or at least one of the hot button issues. And people are wondering, is the media treating both of these candidates fairly? Let's bring in the former CEO of Godfather's Pizza, radio talk show host, and was a presidential candidate himself, Mr. Herman Cain. Nice to see you this morning.
Thank you.
What do you
Happy
think?
to be with you.
Well, we appreciate you being here. Is the media treating both of these candidates fairly?
Absolutely not. All you have to do is look at the fact that there are two perceptions of race relations in America. And the media, they only play to one. You have race relations through the lens of the liberal media, and you have race relations through the experience that people have every day. And that's the big difference that the liberal media does not make a distinction of. My experience with people I'm around every day does not say that we have a divisive, negative race relationship in America. I went to the grocery store yesterday to get a loaf of bread. White people were taking pictures with me. What kind of divisive, negative situation is that? So I don't see race relations the way the liberal media does it through the lens of the media. It's two perceptions, and they don't distinguish between the two.
How do they get past? I mean, the difference here is they go after his tone, the way he articulates these things, as opposed to the policies he's talking about, which have failed the inner cities, where they're controlled by Democrats for decades, whether it's education or employment or policing. How does he get through the tone to the actual substance?
The reason they attack his tone is because they can't attack his content. And here's the other thing that has Hillary and all of the Democrats upset. Donald Trump is taking his message about how the Democrats have deceived them for decades directly to the black community. They are livid. Donald Trump will get criticized if he doesn't go and talk to black people. He's going to get criticized if he goes. They don't want him to go because he's going to tell them the truth, like the things you referred to.
Right.
Donald Trump tells the truth. Hillary Clinton ignores the truth. All you have to do is look at those statistics you referred to, and the black community has not benefited from liberal Democrat policies in decades. He's simply telling them the truth, and some of them are understanding it.
Well, if you were calling Herman Cain on Sunday night, you got voicemail because he knows the VMAs were on, and everything stopped at the Cain household because the VMAs are on. Beyoncé played for about 45 minutes. She did her entire album, I think, but one of the things that stuck out with us is the fact...
Clearly, the white community has to listen to the black community, because we can sit on this couch and say our own opinions, but we're not living in a black community. So how can race relations improve here in America? And what does the white community need to do to listen to the black community?
First, Ainsley, understand that there's a difference between the problems in the inner city, where you have a big concentration of blacks who are poor, without jobs and without hope, versus the rest of black America. They are not one homogeneous group. That is the first mistake that a lot of people make. What Donald Trump is talking about, we've got to address those issues because they're so far behind the rest of America, and determine some targeted approaches. Not more pandering, not more handouts, but real economic opportunity. Right. When we lost a lot of jobs in this country, which is something that we all are aware of, except the Democrats want to shift the subject and not talk about it. When you talk about we have less jobs than we had 7 years ago, you have even less in the black community. When you talk about more people on food stamps, you have even more people on food stamps in the black community. This is what Trump is saying we've got to address, and you address it with economic prosperity, not with economic stagnation, which is what Hillary, who is Obama 3.0, want to bring to America.
And she'll say the same thing because she wants to be his third term. But on Saturday, critics will be silenced because Donald Trump will be going to a black church in Detroit. And so we'll see how that goes. He's going to take questions. Meanwhile, the other major story, which seems to be everyone's fourth and fifth story, is the Clinton Foundation and their link to what the State Department was doing during her reign as Secretary of State. Now we have emails that reveal that executives from UBS, the Rockefeller Foundation, and Western Union were all big donors to the foundation and asked for access to the Chinese president, who was in town for a luncheon. What does this tell you?
It tells me that the Clinton campaign is desperate. Brian, you've heard me talk about 3 tactics that the Democrats use, and Hillary's using them on steroids. S-I-N. Shift the subject. They don't want to talk about the Clinton Foundation. They don't want to talk about the emails. They want to shift the subject to attacking Donald Trump. Ignore the facts. They want to ignore the facts in the black community. They want to ignore the fact that for the first quarter of this year, we had an anemic 1.1 GDP growth and name calling. They have taken name calling to a whole new level. They've called Donald Trump a racist. He's not. They called him a bigot. He's not. And then her campaign manager recently called her, I don't even know what he called her, but it doesn't make any sense.
Right. Hey, Herman, we're going to look forward to seeing you. The Trump campaign is utilizing you. They're going to have you out with Vice President nominee Mike Pence this week. And also will join us on Fox and Friends. Thanks so much.
We'll be following you.
He's doing a big rally, and I'll be there.
Well, then it got even bigger. Herman Cain, thank you very much for joining us.
Outrage this morning after 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick sits out the national anthem to protest what he calls American oppression of blacks. Now, furious fans reacting like this. In the 60s, Jim Brown, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Wilt Chamberlain, and others would stand up for what they thought was the unequal society in which America was in. Do you equate the two?
I'm sorry?
Do you equate what Jim Brown, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Muhammad Ali did in the 60s to what Colin Kaepernick is doing now?
No, I don't believe so. I mean, I wasn't alive then, so I don't really, know the history behind it, nor was I there for it. But,
But Nate, I know part of the reason you're passionate about this is your family, and a lot of people are frustrated about this because that flag represents service in the military. Do you have a personal tie to? You clearly do. What's your personal tie to this flag?
Yeah, I have a ton of family members, from my cousins to, my grandfather served World War II. I had an uncle at Vietnam. I had another uncle who retired after 20-some years in the military. So, I'd hate to believe that they did that for the reason, for people to be able to disrespect the flag and the national anthem. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but at the same time, you can still respect the nation that gives you the allotted freedoms to be a professional athlete.
Here is Colin Kaepernick not backing down. Listen.
My guess is he's going to be sitting a while, and not for the reasons that he just stated. I think his career's coming to an end, and this was a last-ditch effort to stay in the news. Right. My opinion.
And everyone will blame it on the statements, but it's really been his play. He's supposed to be one of the bright young stars in the league, led the San Francisco 49ers to the Super Bowl, but has been terrible since. Nate, thanks so much. Strongest evidence of pay to play yet. Newly released email showing a direct connection between the Clinton Foundation and Hillary Clinton's State Department.
And now calls are growing louder and louder for a special investigation.
Amounts involved, the favors done, and the significant number of times it was done require an expedited investigation by a special prosecutor immediately.
So could Congress get involved when lawmakers return in September?
All right, joining us right now to discuss is Florida Republican Congressman Ron DeSantis. Congressman, how big a deal is this? A lot of people are home saying, well, these Republicans are out for blood with Hillary Clinton no matter what she does. But how significant is it that ABC and the AP are leading a lot of this investigation?
Well, I think the evidence is very significant, Brian. If you look of the non-state actors that she met with while at the State Department, the majority of those people were major donors to the Clinton Foundation. And then you look at some of the actions that the State Department took while she was Secretary of State that furthered the interests of those donors. So at a minimum, you have enough evidence to launch a criminal investigation. And yes, under these circumstances, you absolutely need to have that done by a special counsel. There's just no way around that. And I'd also add that when you see how she didn't turn over all her work-related emails, which she lied about, and then the emails she didn't turn over, the attorneys used BleachBit to forensically clean the server. That, at a minimum, to me, is consciousness of guilt. There was something on that server that they did not want the American people to see. You don't use BleachBit if you're just trying to erase yoga emails.
Yeah, good point. Let's take a look at the most recent information that was just released. There are 3 donors that have given a lot of money to the foundation. You have Bob McCann with UBS. Judith Roden gave $10 to $25 million. She's with the Rockefeller Foundation. And then Hekmet Erst with Western Union. And there are emails that prove that individuals with the foundation were writing to people within the State Department, Uma Abedin, saying these individuals want to sit next to the president of China at this big luncheon. And then you have this guy. You have Gilbert. How do you pronounce his last name? Shougri. He is connected to Hezbollah, and he won't even, he's not even allowed to come in the U.S. He applied for a visa at the U.S. Embassy in Paris and was denied that, but yet he's given money to the Clinton Foundation.
And there's other instances in which people who were Clinton Foundation donors are applying for loans through the State Department, and those loans were approved very expeditiously. Normally it would take 6 months to a year. So I think all of that shows that the Clinton Foundation was really acting as the gatekeeper to the State Department. You try to meet with Secretary Clinton through official channels, may not have luck. The way to really do it was to go through the foundation, and that not only is that not right, that violates the agreement she signed with President Obama saying she was going to keep the foundation at arm's length while she was Secretary of State.
Well, we see from the emails that it wasn't at arm's length. Congressman, you've raised money for campaigns. You've got donors that would like to meet with you. They're saying, hey, this is just folks that give money that happen to be, I mean, what does it mean to give money to a foundation that's tied to a Secretary of State? What are the implications on policy, or is this just the way Washington works?
Well, as you know, she was not an elected official as Secretary of State. That's a cabinet position, so she's not raising money for campaigns, and all that stuff is fully disclosed when a member of Congress raises money. But I'd also say I don't think there's any member of Congress, if you took 150 meetings, that 80 or 90 of those meetings would be with donors. I mean, it's usually constituents who come and visit, people that have problem with veterans benefits, Social Security. So I think there's a big difference there. And I also think another difference is that this was money effectively going to the Clinton family, because the way that foundation is run, it really serves as a slush fund for Bill and Hillary and Chelsea. And so it's not that the money was even going for a campaign. It was really going to them personally in some respects.
It's just unbelievable. If you want to know what a Clinton White House would be like if the 90s weren't enough of an indicator. I'm sorry, I got a fly here harassing me. Wasn't enough of an indicator. I thought Ainsley would knock that away earlier. Now we see what it was like in the State Department.
Yeah, no, without question. I mean, the idea that after seeing years and years of this type of controversy always surrounding the Clintons, that if she's elected president, that we're going to somehow have 4 scandal-free years, that is an absolute pipe dream. And I think there's going to be more that come out with these emails, and I think there'll be more that come out before the election.
Oh, yeah. WikiLeaks says that there will be. All right. Thanks, Congressman.
Thank you very much.
But if they are looking for a special prosecutor, Ken Starr's available because he left there.
Oh, they would be first on their list.
I'm sure they would be.
Yeah.
Popular women's magazines now ditching the fashion fads and diet tips to take a stab at politics, and their new leading lady, Hillary Clinton.
Well, Vanity Fair, 5 shockingly relatable Hillary Clinton emails emerge in the latest cache. Listen to this. L, how Hillary Clinton first discovered emoji.
Ooh, that's hard-hitting. Cosmo, you can turn to Cosmo if you want to learn about how Hillary Clinton is no longer a pumpkin spice latte kind of gal.
Please tell me more. And Elle magazine says this: Hillary Clinton pins brunch food, snapshots from the trail, Cyndi Lauper themed needlepoint.
What? All right, Cosmo writes 16 heart letters to Hillary Clinton from girls who just want to see a woman in the White House.
Wow. Okay. Well, a lot of hard-hitting stuff. Joining us from L.A. to weigh in, comedian Heather McDonald. Heather, come on. This is just hard-hitting journalism, isn't it?
I mean, it's really very insipid, and it's unfair to the readers. Like, I want to know, I buy those magazines because I want to hear some juicy stuff. So if you're going to write articles about Hillary and you want them to be positive, give me some juicy scoop. Like, let's talk about the fact that she stayed married to a guy that cheated on her for years and years and years. Maybe that makes her the ultimate feminist, that nobody can get her down, that she's the Teflon woman. Like, if you're going to find a positive angle, at least make it interesting. Who cares about a pumpkin latte? Is she Selena Gomez? Like, who cares?
Here's the weird thing, Heather, is that there's a lot of famous people that sell magazines. Like, Donald Trump brings ratings to shows. Hillary Clinton doesn't sell magazines. She doesn't get ratings. She was just on Jimmy Kimmel. She tanked his ratings. He lost to every 12:30 show. What are these magazines doing to get this woman?
I think they just think, oh, you know, every woman's going to want to know about our first female presidential candidate. And instead of really getting into some interesting topics, they are underestimating the reader to think that we would think it's cute that she doesn't know what an emoji is. I think that's kind of scary. Like, really, you don't know the name of an emoji? Like, come on, Grandma. I mean, I know you're a grandma, but you are the grandma that's going to be running our country, possibly. Find out what these words mean if you're so, you know, into Pinterest and, you know, with your fun emails. Like, oh, well, this is with this email. Isn't that cute? You know, no, it's not cute. It's kind of like really lame.
Heather, I loved how the Philadelphia Inquirer, they were making fun of, saying how great Hillary Clinton looked in her all-white pantsuit, which I thought, I loved that suit. But then they talked about Melania Trump's fashion, and they said it was a scary statement. I mean, come on, Melania looks amazing in anything she puts on. And that dress sold out immediately.
Right, and the dress looks beautiful, and on anyone, you know, it's a great dress. It's a great fitting dress. Of course, she's stunning. White's a great color to wear for anybody. You know, providing that Donald spray tan didn't get on Melania's sleeve, it was a great choice, which it didn't. She was flawless. Nobody touched her. No one got a mark on her. So, I mean, that is so incredibly biased and ridiculous,
what about
you know, that someone would say that.
You know, a lot of them do the who wore it better.
Yeah.
You know, with the pantsuits, you could say Kim Jong-un, Hillary Clinton, who wore it.
Orange one.
Very good point.
Yeah.
I could see Jimmy Fallon doing that, too. Heather, the other thing is interesting is that you have Ivanka, who is an international model, and you also have Melania, who is a supermodel. If you just want to do shameless sales for your magazine, you would think you might have to lean right during this election specifically, but that doesn't seem like it's happening.
No, it's not happening at all. And, you know, they are two interesting women that you could find interesting facts about and, of course, explore their beauty and fashion tips. But, I mean, that's the deal. It's always been like that. I've been reading these magazines since I was 9, and I remember always reading, they would do some political articles, and they would always lean towards the Democrats because, quite frankly, there's more female Democrats in office than there are Republicans. But this one, it's just so hard just trying to find, you know, ridiculous things that can be seen as cute or positive instead of really delving into the subject.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
That's
what's
interesting.
Yeah, I want to hear about policy. I want to hear about what they're running on. I'd like to hear about their families. I don't care if they like spice latte or what emojis they like or not.
That's where we're different. I would like to know, Heather, what is a pumpkin spice latte person, and why isn't she like that anymore?
Well, I guess she said she didn't like it anymore. They took it from like a Q&A, and because she found out there were a lot of calories.
You can overdose on pumpkin spice latte,
so then she's like, you know, so now she's going to go for a skinny pumpkin spice. I mean, come on. Like, you know, what? Oh, now she's switching to soy, girls. Guess who's lactose intolerant before she enters the White House? What? Your girl Hill. You know, come on.
Heather, thanks so much. I appreciate you putting it all in perspective.
Well done. Thank you.
You read the women's magazine, so we don't have to. We appreciate it.
Exactly. I love them.
All right. That makes one of us.
Rudy Giuliani here on the curvy couch with us. Good morning to you, Mayor.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right, so let's talk first about the immigration. He's going to have this big speech rolled out this week. What can we expect?
Well, what we can expect is the clear things, for sure. He's going to build a wall. It's going to be a technological as well as a physical wall, meaning
we hear 35 feet high with wall technology.
And with technology that can detect people 5-6 miles away, with technology that can detect people that can dig under the wall. You know, they always say we can dig under. There's plenty of technology that can prevent that. A wall not unlike the wall that was built in Israel, which Prime Minister Netanyahu himself has told me was the most effective thing in securing their border that they've done in about 10 years.
The wall is not in dispute, though. It's the immigration policy that some have said he might be softening on. The deportation part of it. Is he going to not deport? Is there a pathway to some sort of legalization? That's what folks are wondering at this point.
First of all, I think that's the part of it he has to refine and decide, but it's pretty much decided. It'll be pretty much the same thing as he always said. First of all, he is going to increase significantly the number of Border Patrol, increase the number of immigration agents for a specific purpose. Stop them at the border and arrest the people that are here illegally. Now, since there are 11 million, 12 million, 13 million, 14 million, 15 million, we don't know. I don't know how many illegal are here. He's going to start in the right way. He's going to go after the most dangerous criminals first, then the less dangerous criminals second, And by the time we get there, then we'll see what our population is of non-criminal illegal immigrants. And I think that's the point at which he has to decide, are there some that have to be sent back because they're on welfare, because they're not producing, because they're not, because they're questionable? Are there some that would have some kind of status well short of path to citizenship, legalization? I don't know the answer to that. That's the debate. And I don't know if you can really decide that until you get down to that number.
Right.
The big objection that Republicans had throughout is, we want to do this in 2 stages. Stage number 1, let's get control of the border. Number 2, let's get rid of the criminals. And then number 3, we have a country that's so much calmer, a lot safer, and we have a country in which we can make more rational decisions about what do we do about how many remains. And it's your guess or mine as to how many that number is.
I think I thought it was admirable for him to say, I want to try to get the African American community to realize that I want their vote. No one's asked for it. Bush, McCain, Romney have not done an effective job going after it. He started that about 2 weeks ago, at which time there's people listening, other people, there's been blowback. Here's Donna Brazile saying, I'm not buying this new outreach, and Hillary's really a friend to that community.
As I've watched this debate, this conversation about bigotry, about racism, I find it all misplaced. First of all, Donald Trump has not held an event in the black community. He has not gone to a black church, as Hillary Clinton has done. He's not gone to a historical black college, as Hillary Clinton. He's not met with the mothers of children who have been slain and killed from violence in this country, as Hillary Clinton has done.
Is that true?
Well, first of all, he is going to go to a black church. It's going to be more than one. That'll be the first. It takes time to build up those relationships. After all, the Republican Party hasn't had those relationships for, I don't know, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. So it isn't as if it's your natural constituency. You don't see Hillary Clinton going to Alabama or Mississippi or going to in fact, she wouldn't even meet with the mothers of the slain police officers, or the mothers whose children were slain by illegal immigrants who were people who had committed crimes in the United States. She hasn't even talked about them or dealt with them. She's kept away from them. I mean, in fact, she's been hiding all summer. So I think it's a little hypocritical for these people who have criticized forever. The Republicans aren't making outreach to the African American communities. Well, whether they like it or not, he is. And, of course, it's going to begin first by laying the groundwork for it, which he did in his speeches. And remember, he did some of those speeches in the Deep South, where people would say, gee, you shouldn't be saying that in the Deep South, maybe 20 or 30 years ago. Well, thank God nowadays you can say it in the Deep South, and you can get great applause for it. And educating white audiences on the idea that there's going to be an outreach to the black community, Hispanic community, white community, and we're all one.
Right.
I think in and of itself is a big contribution no Republican has ever made before. These people should say, we oppose Donald Trump on other things, but we applaud him for doing something we've been saying Republicans don't do for 20 or 30 years, but they're a bunch of hypocrites.
I want to talk to you about the war on cops. I want to get your opinion on this. Last night at the VMA Awards, Beyoncé, she walks the...
And I saved more black lives than any of those people you saw on stage by reducing crime, and particularly homicide, by 75%.
So does that offend you, seeing those images? Of which
maybe 4,000 or 5,000 were African-American young people who are alive today because of the policies I put in effect that weren't in effect for 35 years. So if you're going to do that, then you also should symbolize why the police officers are in those neighborhoods, and what are you going to do about that? And what are you doing about it? Are you, to me, it's two easy answers. A much better education and a good job. And what the heck have you done, like in Baltimore, when they all stood in Baltimore? I was sick when I saw all the politicians standing in Baltimore after the police situation and saying, nobody's done anything for this community in 50 years. Well, that is a heck of a thing to say, because they've been in charge for 50 years, and they have failed the community. I didn't fail Harlem. I turned Harlem around. I didn't fail Bedford-Stuyvesant. I turned it around. Go there now. Go walk in Harlem, and then flash back to 25 years ago and go to Harlem before I was mayor. And one was a place where crime was rampant and no national stores, and now there's a thriving community in Harlem.
And Beyoncé is an extremely powerful, popular performer, and when she does stuff like that, that message for the next generation is pretty indelible. But thanks so much. Stick around, Mayor.
Thank you.
Nothing has changed about Donald Trump's position, and his principles have been absolutely consistent. We're going to secure the border. We're going to build a wall, have a physical barrier. We're going to enforce the laws of this country, end sanctuary cities.
Well, that is the VP nominee for the Republican Party, Mike Pence, defending Donald Trump after he has been slammed for changing his tone on immigration. Trump set to make a major address on this issue on Wednesday. So what can he say to win over voters? Well, here to weigh in, political reporter, Washington Free Beacon reporter, Gabby Moraniello. She's, by the way, in Washington. She's joining us in just a second. But here next to me is the author of Crossing the Thinnest Line, Lauren Chevet. Lauren, let's start out with you now. And your book is coming out in 3 weeks, so congratulations on that. So I want to ask you about this, because Donald Trump has been softening his tone on immigration. That's a word that he's used. That's a word that Kellyanne Conway has used as well. How is that playing over with voters so far?
Well, I think at this point, he's got a virtually impossible needle to thread. I mean, he's been very clear about his position, and you just heard Governor Pence say that his position has not changed. And his position is fundamentally at odds with the majority of Americans. 65% of Americans actually support a path to legal citizenship for illegal immigrants who are in the country. It's actually a tiny minority of Americans. Even among Republicans, 50% of Republicans support some path to citizenship for immigrants.
But among his base, and we now have Gabby available down in Washington. Gabby, this change in tone has to be concerning to a lot of people who are supporting him so far.
It absolutely does, and we've seen a lot of outrage from some of his top supporters. I know Ann Coulter wasn't happy to see him shift his tone on immigration, and I know there are a lot of outstanding questions about where he intends to go with this. The biggest being whether this is a shift in his approach or a shift in his policy. Kellyanne Conway was on the airwaves yesterday talking about mass deportation and whether or not Donald Trump still intends to deport some 11 million immigrants who are still in the U.S. illegally, and there are a lot of questions about whether or not he does still intend to do that. We know he wants to build a wall along the southern border. We know he wants to look at visas, but whether or not he plans to take a more humane approach to deportation is something that we should expect him to address in the coming days.
Yeah, but he can't afford to alienate his base so far, and that's why a lot of people who supported him had supported him so far. And if he's not going to actually do that, deport 11 million illegals, I think a lot of those voters might be upset and could even stay home. Take a look, though, at this Washington Post ABC News poll. And the question that was posed was, who do you trust more to handle immigration? And the answer may surprise some Trump supporters. 57% better trust Clinton to handle it, 36% Donald Trump. Lauren?
Well, look, I think part of that is a reflection of the fact that it's so completely outside of anything rational, reasonable, or even practical to deport 11 million people many of whom have been living in the country for years. And so I think when it comes to this question of a path to legal citizenship, that is the view of a majority of Americans. By the way, George W. Bush won 40% of Hispanic votes when he ran in both 2000 and 2004.
And the Bush administration wouldn't call it amnesty, but it was effectively amnesty, and that upset a lot of his core constituency.
It did, but it won in the election. So in the end, the question is the core constituency who supports deporting 11 million people actually going to win you the White House? And I think the answer is no. And I think Trump is starting to realize that. If you look at the basic numbers, you really have no choice. And this is the problem. If candidates continue to alienate minority voters the way he has, the White House will remain Democrat for years.
We'll get to that issue in just a second. Gabby, I want to ask you quickly before we move on to our second topic, what does he need to say in his speech that he's planning to give on this on Wednesday?
Well, again, he needs to address the question of whether or not this is a change in policy. Is he going to change where he stands on mass deportation? Is he going to change where he stands on building a wall along the southern border and tightening up our border to make it less porous? Is he going to change the way that, President Obama has enacted programs like DAPA and DACA? These are things that he hasn't really gotten into the nitty-gritty details about before, and I expect him to address in that immigration speech.
Okay, let me ask you both about something else. Despite mounting pressure and criticism, Hillary Clinton is still refusing to hold a press conference. So the question is she simply trying to run out the clock and avoid the media on this? Gabby?
I absolutely think she is. I mean, if you listen to what her campaign manager, Robbie Mook, has been saying, when asked whether or not they intend to hold a press conference between now and Election Day, he says, you know, we'll get around to that. We'll take a look at it. That, to me, is a flat no. And Hillary Clinton, earlier this week, there was a poll released that showed that 69% of independent voters do not see her as an honest or trustworthy candidate.
All right, Lauren, just a few seconds left, ladies.
I mean, I don't think she has a lot. She has more to risk than to gain by doing the press conferences. I happen to be someone who would like to see her do it, but I also can understand why there's really no upside. She's doing very well in the polls. She's communicating her message the way she wants to. Why take the risk? If I'm her campaign manager, I take the same path.
We all want to hear from her, voters, reporters,
well,
too.
People are hearing from her, just maybe not the way they want to.
Yeah, okay. Well, Lauren Chavez, thank you so much. And Gabby Moore-Angelo, thank you so much for joining us as well.
Expecting to get some answers on the immigration plan from Donald Trump himself. Last night he tweeted this: I will be making a major speech on illegal immigration on Wednesday in the great state of Arizona. Big crowds looking for a larger venue. I want to bring in former House Majority Leader Tom DeLay right now. Sir, good to have you on the program. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Maria. Great. Good you're back.
Yeah, what's your take on immigration today and how it should be fixed? First, I want to get your take on what Donald Trump is saying, certainly, and Hillary Clinton's plans as well. But what should be done to offset 11 million illegals and the fact that the borders are obviously not secure?
Well, first of all, as you know, this election is about choices. So when we talk about Trump's immigration plan, we should juxtapose that against Hillary's plan, which is total open borders, welfare benefits, sanctuary cities, the mess that we're in now, don't enforce the law. On the other hand, Donald Trump is talking about the right things to do: secure the border, stop sanctuary cities, if you're illegal here, you don't get welfare benefits. And then we all sort of focused on, well, what do you do with the 11 million? And he's talking about a snapback program. I think he's dead on about his immigration plan. Now we're arguing over semantics and how you talk about it. We ought to be talking about Hillary's plan versus Trump's plan and let the American people decide.
So you don't think he has flip-flopped or changed his plans in any way? Because, you know, people are saying, well, if you're now stepping back from deporting the 11 million illegals in this country, it sounds a lot like what the president has been doing already. So people are just wondering, what exactly is the plan?
Well, that's true. But he's been talking about snapback during this whole campaign, which I don't particularly agree with. I think if you want to deport the 11 million people, you set up a work visa program. We here in Texas would love for the federal government to decide who gets to come in from Mexico and work in Texas in the best interest of the United States and U.S. workers. But Trump, to be honest with you, I think he's trying to reach out and make Hispanics feel better about it.
I see.
And in Texas, a lot of Hispanics in Texas that are American citizens don't like Hillary's plan, don't like illegals, because they come in and compete for jobs with our own Hispanic citizens. So Donald Trump's on the right track.
Okay.
He just needs to figure out a way to talk about it.
Here's Harlan Hill.
Hi, yes, so I actually think you just brought up a great point. Talking about the economic consequences of immigration, talking about the national security consequences of immigration. You know, I mean, this cheap workforce actually disproportionately impacts people on the low end of the pay scale. And so how does he start to talk about the economic consequences of immigration so that people start hearing that and they will understand that? When are we going to hear that from Donald?
Well, to me, I don't understand who's advising me on this. Maybe a senator from Alabama, but you ought to talk to the senators from the border states, because they understand it. And they understand the Hispanics that are here, that are American citizens. They're not in favor of illegal immigration, and that's what he ought to appeal to, rather than get involved in all this media hype that's going on back and forth. Just be very straightforward, as Trump can do, and talk about the economic impact on our communities on the border and the border states. And most importantly, talk to those people that are here that are American citizens, rather than playing this game of that anybody from all over the world has the right to come to America. You ought to be talking about what's in the best interest of the American citizens.
Congressman, I think you're bringing up a great point, and I think the Hispanic community is a vital, critical one here in the United States. They're actually more aligned with Republican ideals that Donald Trump can talk about when he's saying they're entrepreneurs, they own small businesses, and we're seeing that, you know, he's getting panned right now because he's changing his position, but, you know, when it's your candidate, it's evolving. When it's not your candidate, it's flip-flopping. But do you think he can be sincere in the debates come September when he's talking about these issues? Do you think he'll be able to stand up toe-to-toe against Hillary on this immigration policy and actually appeal to the Hispanic community?
Well, exactly. And anytime he opens his mouth to talk about immigration, he needs to start with Hillary's plan, because most Americans do not want open borders. Most Americans want a legal immigration that benefits America. They don't want these sanctuary cities. They don't want illegals flooding in and taking advantage of our welfare system or our education system or our healthcare system.
Right.
It's how you present it, and he needs to do a better job of that.
Right now, with our top story, Donald Trump making a huge advertising buy in key battleground states. His campaign will spend upwards of $10 million in 9 states. They include Ohio, Florida, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Iowa. Of course, the swing states. These are ads he's expecting to move the needle and help close the gap he has with Hillary Clinton in the polls. But will they? I want to bring in Kelly Riddell right now, a Washington Times reporter. Kelly, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Maria.
What do you think? Is this what he needs to offset what she's been throwing out there, which is a lot of ads, negative ads, because she's got the money to do so?
Yeah, I think by the end of July, she had run $600 million worth of television ads to Donald Trump's $4.8 million. So he's definitely behind the 8 ball when it comes to actually getting out there on TV and showing a different side of him, which is the most important thing. We don't want to let Hillary Clinton define him and his message. So to get his message out there in these swing states and counterbalance kind of what she's doing is important. He's got a lot of money, and he seems to be sitting on it. So a lot of us have been speculating, what is he actually going to do with this money? You know, ads are number one, but he also needs to build a ground game and an infrastructure out there so that when November comes, he knows where his people are and he can get them out to vote. And that's something that we haven't seen yet.
Yeah, it's a good point. Harlan, does he need to do ads knocking Hillary Clinton, or does he need to do ads talking about his strength and leadership when it comes to the issues that are important, national security and the economy?
Well, I think Kelly may have a take on this too, but I think that what will be really interesting is, does he go positive at this point and leave the negative stuff, the negative ads, the negative media, to the PACs. The PACs are starting to put together very significant money, and I would like to see them go negative while he starts to reintroduce himself as a candidate.
He should take the high road.
Yeah, he should take the high road, and I'm interested in what Kelly has to say about this because she just mentioned the ground game. So basically, Hillary Clinton has a staff of about 800 people. He's got 70 or so. Is that where the money that you had mentioned he's raised that he hasn't deployed yet, is that where it's going to go? Is it going to go towards the ground effort and getting staff in those key battleground states?
I mean, and that's where on a traditional year with a traditional candidate, that's exactly where it would go. You'd have the RNC doing their part, and they are running the ground game for him. And then you'd have separate ground game teams in battleground states like Florida, like Pennsylvania, like Ohio, where you're going to need that extra voter turnout to perhaps swing the election. So far, we haven't seen him do this. We know that she is doing this. And in an election cycle where both candidates are have such high unfavorables, it's really you need to get these people out there. Even if they hold their nose, you've got to identify them and get them out to the ballot boxes in November.
Kelly, there's a group, apparently the Wall Street Journal is reporting that there's a group of white Republican retirees moving to Florida, giving Donald Trump a boost in the Sunshine State. The latest Mason-Dixon poll shows that Hillary Clinton has only a 2-point advantage there. She's at 44%. He's at 42% among registered voters. What do you think about these white GOP retirees? Is that going to be enough to help Donald Trump take Florida?
Well, certainly move the needle, and he needs the needle moved in any incremental bit. The NRA is also doing a lot on the ground to help get the vote out. But the Trump campaign does need to build an infrastructure there, and I think they're working on it. Their latest FEC reports will be telling, but so far we haven't seen much go into actual infrastructure build. A lot being spent on, Make America Great hats, but not a lot on the ground game.
Kelly, Harlan Hill here. So one thing that I thought was so amazing about the Obama's campaign in 2008 and 2012 is they spent a lot of time on data determining when and where to place Barack Obama, because they realized that a campaign's most valuable resource is their candidate. And I see Donald Trump all over the place. He's doing a lot of different media appearances. Sometimes he does different events in states that I don't think that he can win. What are you hearing about being more intelligent about resource allocation, not wasting time on events and media here in New York or New Jersey, which he's not going to win, to be honest, and spending it instead in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida, states that he can win?
I think Kellyanne Conway is a great addition into the campaign, and I think that we've seen a lot more disciplined Donald Trump since she's been at the helm. He's also hired the Cambridge data analytics firm that Ted Cruz used in terms of motivating the grassroots and identifying people. So that's a positive step there. They were also actually used in the Brexit vote over in Europe in terms of identifying voters who might want to vote leave and then getting them to the polls. So he is slowly kind of getting his ground game up and running. It's just, does he have time left? I mean, we're only 70 days or such odd days out to November. So.
Yeah.